You sit on the toilet, don't you? Use that as your meditation.
Not my wife, not your wife, nor anybody listening to this podcast has eaten a shit sandwich. We didn't have
Welcome to Recovery Unfiltered. I'm Larry. I'm an alcoholic.
I am Rob. I am also an alcoholic. We are not professionals. There are no letters after our names. We know very little. However, you will hear the word God and a four-letter word in the same sentence. You will also be offended. So if you are easily offended, just pass us by. This podcast is not for you.
Our opinions are just that. If you don't agree with what we're saying, that's okay. We're going to love you anyways. We are not in any way affiliated with AA.
So sit back, grab a beverage of your choice, and get ready.
Let's go.
Hello, Robert.
So now you're just tying in both of them, the old and the new.
You know
Whatever.
I may just get on there and sing one time.
Do it.
Just fucking sing at the top of my lungs.
I love it. What are you going to sing?
I don't fucking know. Hi, Rob.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm well, buddy. Hey, we just finished up with John.
Yes, we did.
And we're going to bring Heather back in.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to go over something with you guys a little bit because this one's going to be a little bit different because Heather and I think we struggle with a little bit of the mental health side of it. So we're gonna dig into that. We're gonna dig into her.
So yeah, Johnny, you and I don't struggle with mental health at all.
You fuckers, you got mental health. You guys have mental health issues, but it's a different kind of mental health.
Okay.
Yeah, hold on a second. I want you guys to listen to this. And then we're gonna talk about this a little bit longer. Here we go.
My friend Nasser, he loved his father, idealized his father. He would do anything to make him happy. But his father was the kind of person who's not easy to impress. And year after year, Nasser tried, and his father was like, yeah. Fourth year in college, Nasser got straight A's. And he thought to himself, this is it. This is what will finally make my dad proud. He picked up the phone. He called his dad. Dad, I got straight A's. Are you proud? Please tell me you're proud, Father. Yeah, listen, son, I'll have to call you back. I'm busy. I'm busy was the single sentence that broke the camel's back. And he started drinking, doing drugs, hanging out with the wrong crowd. Nasser, why? Why are you throwing your life away? If the one person in the world that I care about the most doesn't care, then why should I? And one evening I got the phone call. Nasser's in the emergency room, drug overdose. I rushed to that hospital. I saw him on that bed, and I saw that machine go beep, beep, beep. And I saw doctors try to bring him back to life. Clear! 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 It's clear that a single word could have saved this life. Words have power. Words are power. Words could be your power. You can change a life, inspire a nation, and make this world a beautiful place. Isn't that what we all wanted? Isn't that why we are all in this hall? Your mouth can spit venom, or it can mend a broken soul. Ladies and gentlemen, let that be our goal.
Yeah, go ahead. That's powerful. Powerful.
I had something happen to me.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you what I said. I'm going to give you the background, keeping people in anonymity, and get your opinion. Wow, I wouldn't have been brought up if you hadn't played that. Okay, I've been reached to through church, been reached out to by, pastor reach out. Hey, there's a couple, and a couple of times it's been older people who've had wayward sons, and they just come to me for advice. Is there a way I can get to my son to reach, and I'm usually waiting for the son, God to bring the son to me, because it hasn't happened. I got another couple, older couple, 80s. I said, yeah, you can give him, of course you can give him my number. So they reached out to me, go to church, believers, talking to the mother, and I'm talking to the father about prayer, and he says, I don't pray.
Mm.
Okay. So now I'm kind of understanding. I said, well, because, they're going to give him my number, their son my number, whether he reaches out. Usually they don't, but whatever, that's up to God. We'll pray about it. And he said, I don't pray. You've been going to church for how many years? I said, I was like, what am I going to say to this? So I said, well, this is what I said to the man. I said, well, okay, but I would sure hate if I was in your place, because I'm my father, to get to heaven, see the Lord, and ask him, why didn't you help my son? And have him look at me, Daryl, his name's not Daryl, and say, well, I was waiting for you to pray for your son, but you never did. I was waiting to hear that one prayer from you, and I was going to touch and change his heart, but you never asked me for nothing. You showed up at my door, you showed up at my house, you sat there for 40 years, and you never asked me to help your son. God probably won't say that, but wouldn't you hate to have to hear that?
Oh, yeah.
And I couldn't, and I met with this couple today, and finally got to meet him face to face anyway. But that's just what I'd said to him. Wow, what a shame that would be.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't pray for your child. But now talking to the man, now I understand why he is the way he is. He has a lot of
the son?
The father.
Oh, the father. Gotcha.
You understand the father, you'll understand the son.
Right.
So anyway.
And I played that because of the words, and because
words. But what were we raised with?
Yes,
Sticks and stones may
break your bones,
but words will never
hurt you. Right?
Really, and let me ask John this question. I've asked you before, John. My father was my hero. I watched him die right next to me. He had an aneurysm rupture. We were working together. I would rather my dad ever pick up a switch and go ahead and discipline me than ever look at me and say, son, you're disappointed. Son, the best part of you ran down. That hurts more than...
I couldn't even imagine.
More than a stick would ever hurt me.
Right. Yeah.
So words, that's why I'm intentional with what I say.
Right. Words, and I always say that because, it comes back, and Rob, some things you say that stick with me, and you say that all the time. Words mean something, right? And
words matter.
Words matter, and they do. And the more, I never really paid a lot of attention to that until Rob started saying it, right? Even when you read stuff, when you look, even when you say it, one word can change how you receive something, right? I have a guy that works, he's one of my salesmen, and he says this, I appreciate you, right? Thank you. I appreciate you. And I don't even know if he realizes he says it, but you know what? How he says it, I love it. Right. And I know a few people that when they hang up or they say, okay, thanks, I appreciate you. Some people don't, they say it so quickly. You're like, that sounds like it's scripted, but there's this guy, he always says you, right? And he's very meticulous on how he says you. I appreciate you. And then, Katie and I will be talking to each other, right? Husband and wife speaking to each other. One word can take a conversation and change it into an argument instantly. Oh, yeah. Right? One word, right? And when I listen to that, there's a whole, that speech goes on for like 8 minutes. I wish I'd have gotten the guy's name, and I can get it, but just words. And I'm very, very cautious about how I speak to my daughters, how I speak to my wife, how I speak to my employees, how I speak to anybody, because you don't know what that person's going through
or has been through,
right? That you're speaking to, nor does that person know what I've been through that day or what I've dealt with that day.
Yeah.
Right. So our words to each other are very powerful, right? I left here about, a couple weeks ago, and Katie and I had gotten in a big ass fight. I don't even remember what it was over. Who knows? Husband wife thing. Well, I left, drove down around the corner, and after I got down to the end of the corner, I'm like, fuck no. So I came back, pulled in, came inside the garage, and I said, hey, I can't leave like that. I'm sorry, right? And we apologized. And then I drove away. I was just like, I can't leave those words like that.
That's what the Bible says. Do not let the sun go down on your anger.
So anyways, I heard that the other day on one of my podcasts that I was listening to, and I had to find it, right? Like I said, it's probably about 8 minutes
Well, think
long.
about it this way, because the reason would I would say that to you, because you used to say, had a bad fucking day. And there's
well, you changed me when I said I got to go do this. I got to go do this. And you said that, Larry, you get to. And, now I'm very meticulous.
Well, and I've never had a bad day in sobriety. I have hard days and I have easier days. I've never had a bad day in sobriety. Because you try to say that now, if you're having a hard day.
It changes your own thought.
But now think about it this way. Then walk up to Matt and Mary bitching about your day.
Right.
After they just buried a son. That kind of thing. So words matter. Everything in perspective. I'm living on borrowed time. Johnny's living on borrowed time. Every day I get today is glorious. Even going through cancer, which was a bitch. But I never had a bad day there either. There were some hard fucking days. Right. But now I'm just be careful about the words I put out into the universe.
Yesterday in the Saturday morning meeting, Eric was sitting next to me and Mike was sitting next to him. He lost his son at 16 years old with a head-on collision with
Jason's son.
Yeah. And Eric is sitting next to me and he's sharing and he's talking about his relationship with his 16-year-old son and how he's scared to death about his son going out and going. He's basically telling Mike's story of what happened to his son, but Eric has no idea.
That's that man sitting next to him.
Yes, has no idea. And I'm watching Mike's face the entire time Eric's, talking about how he doesn't want to see his son go out and do these kind of things. I'm just watching Mike's face, and that's when it really dawned on me. He has no idea. The man sitting next to him lost his son to the exact same thing you were explaining that you don't ever want to happen to your son. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, wow, it's incredible. Now we just don't know, right? Eric don't know. He didn't know that. Mm-hmm. I did. I was watching Mike's face the entire time. And Mike never even, he may have been feeling it, but I prayed for him in that time because I just, here I am listening to Eric talk about he hopes his son never does this as he's sitting next to a man whose son did that. And it's like, well, how ironic is this? It's crazy. Anyways, that's my introduction for the day. Hi, Heather.
Hi, guys.
Nothing
Heather, I'm an alcoholic.
Hey,
Hi, Heather.
I went deep there to start the show, didn't I? know. It just sometimes I get.
But she can go there. She's sharp. She speaks real well.
I'm excited to hear you, Heather. I hear John speak of you quite often, and John speaks of you very highly. So I'm excited. Welcome in. Come on, tell us about yourself.
Oh goodness. Okay, so I'm Heather. I'm an alcoholic. I've got just over 16 years.
Nice. Well, hold on a second. You're young.
Yeah,
I am.
How old were you when you got?
I was 23.
Okay. Wow.
I had a kid.
That is like 2 legal years of drinking.
Yes.
Wow.
Legally, it was.
For most part.
Yes.
Nice.
So kind of briefly my story leading up to the start of my not so legal drinking days. Looking back, I at the time I grew up in the closest thing is that I knew of to like a Leave It to Beaver family. Uh-huh. My family, my parents were loving, supportive. We had a great childhood. I grew up out in the middle of nowhere on a cattle ranch. I loved it. I wouldn't have traded anything about it for the world. Like any family, we had our struggles, my dad is a Vietnam vet.
Okay. Wow.
And so he has a lot of medical issues from all of that. Chemical warfare is a thing.
Oh yeah.
And my brother, has some issues as well. Largely because dad's genetic DNA was altered before he had us kids, right? So we've all got some quirks. It's just kind of how it works. So I grew up with this expectation of myself that I had to help mom take care of dad and protect my brother and
younger brother,
older brother. So he is 22 months older than I am.
Okay.
He is on the autistic spectrum.
Okay.
And so he struggled a lot going through school as we were growing up. He was picked on incessantly. He was cornered by groups of kids, things of that nature. And so I kind of stepped into this role of helping mom take care of everybody.
At a young age.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And And that was not something that was expected of me. It's what I expected of myself.
Wow. Okay.
Which feeds into things later. But we were, dirt floor poor, but we had everything we wanted.
Absolutely.
I love
that when people say that.
I grew up, riding horses. I started riding with a trainer when I was like 5. I started competing at about the age of 5. It was an amazing way to grow up.
That barrel racing?
I did barrel racing. I did jumping. I did Western pleasure. I did reining, sorting, a little bit of everything.
Wow, that's awesome. So you love Yellowstone?
Yeah, I do. I won my first national championship when I was 8. So it was that was my life. I loved it. Hard work was what you did to have fun. When I was early teens is when I started having some trouble. I struggled with the fact that now looking back, we know that that's when a lot of my mental health issues started to present and a lot of the effects of those started to present, but didn't know that's what it was at the time.
Like how? I mean,
sure. So,
now, would this be about the time where puberty starts, hormones are starting?
Right. Correct.
So that's okay.
Yes.
I got you.
So this is, about the time when, if you are someone who suffers from a mental health disorder, there are a couple of different ages those sort of things can trigger. For a large population of individuals, those things start to trigger and present when you start going through puberty because your hormones are changing.
Right.
Your chemical makeup and balances in your brain are changing along with it.
With females, wow.
Yes.
Big time.
So that's when those things started to kind of present for me, but I didn't know that there was an issue. I was in my head, I didn't have any physical ailments to have wrong with me. So I had to be this perfect entity. I had to help with this. I had to do this. I had to behave this way. I had to think this way. And I started struggling with not understanding why, if I was like everybody else, why couldn't I deal with things like everybody else? When I really started to struggle with all of that is when I was about the summer between 8th grade and freshman year of high school. So I was 15, 16. We moved off the cattle ranch. My mother was finally able to afford to buy their own house for the very first time in my mother and father's marriage. And we were super excited for her, and we got moved, and it's actually the ranch where we live now. And when we moved off of the cattle ranch, I completely started to fall apart because what I know now is that the ranch, the animals, the work was my coping skill. I no longer had that coping skill. So now I started to seek out other coping skills. So beginning of high school is when I started to drink. There was always alcohol around. My parents are both normies. My family is mostly all normies.
Bastards.
Right. Right. But this was even really before I understood the difference between a normie and an alcoholic. We had grown up being told that we were predisposed to being alcoholics because it runs in my father's family. My father was an alcoholic for a time back when he was younger, was court mandated to go to AA meetings, that kind of thing, went to 1 or 2 meetings, decided that made him want to drink more than anything else in the world, and never went back and never picked up another drink in that fashion again. He now can drink like normal and be just fine.
Wow. That's something to dig into right there.
His was very situational. He had just gone through a messy divorce. He had a son from his first marriage and was struggling with all of that. And so his was more, he was a situational drunk per se than necessarily an alcoholic.
So I was gonna say, would you even call him an alcoholic?
He was a
No.
certain, in the book they talk about a certain type of hard drinker,
Right.
who
Right.
looks like us,
Yeah.
but given sufficient reason,
Right.
can stop or
Correct.
moderate.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Now, in my family, that was referred to as an it was referred to as he had been an alcoholic at some point.
Yeah.
The reason for that distinction was because most of the men in his family were alcoholics who never got help for it.
So he was labeled that.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so we knew it also kind of runs on my mother's side, a couple of generations around. So it was something we knew about, but didn't necessarily have a good understanding of what that was. So beginning high school, I started drinking because it allowed me to think like a normal person.
When you were drinking.
Yes. I didn't do it because it was fun. I didn't do it because I enjoyed it. That was never my reason for drinking.
Did it just feel a need?
It quieted the noise in my head.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, the feel.
Okay,
that's
so
it.
we talk, John and I have this thing we talk about all the time, the 14 voices in our heads. Every one of them is a different personality. My 14 voices are my internal committee. They talk to me.
Shitty committee.
Yes.
Sometimes
Some of them are quite lovely. They can stick around. We have pleasant conversations. The world is good. There are others who are just downright nasty, and they can go jump off a bridge, and they never do. But the alcohol quieted the committee.
Yep.
And so I could function and think and react to things in what I viewed as normal.
Amen. Yep.
Right. That continued pretty much throughout most of high school. By the time I got to the end of my high school days, I was a full-blown alcoholic. Like, I carried a gallon of tequila in the back of my truck at all times. I was going through a handle of tequila every 1 to 2 days.
Wow.
That was just to maintain.
Are you just functioning?
Yes. So
Spirit animals here, babe.
right.
I'm
so
just telling you.
the other thing.
How I had to. That's how I was.
Right. So
I had
the
it.
other.
she just got there faster than
Yes,
us.
she
Yes.
did.
So I'm really good at, if I'm going to do something,
White
I
tequila,
don't do
though.
anything by half measures.
Tequila.
So this is another genetic trait in our family. So the women in our family all have a really huge like for tequila. We drink it really, really well, and we do not get hangovers.
Nice.
So there was also never any consequences to my drinking.
Well,
I didn't feel
that's
sick.
dangerous.
I never got sick while
Never
I
got
was
in trouble?
drinking. No. There is a whole lot of stuff still on my yet list.
Good.
It
By the
should
grace
stay
of God,
there.
it'll
Right.
stay there,
Yeah.
but there is a whole lot of stuff on my yet list. So going through, getting towards the end of high school, still drinking, still functioning like a normal person, getting straight A's in school, doing well, still riding my horses, still doing all of those things with no consequences.
Would you go to school after drinking?
What's that?
Would you go to school after drinking? Would you drink before you went to school?
Oh, I drink all day.
Okay, so I thank you. That's what I was just
Yeah.
clarifying.
Yeah. And that was the other weird part for me is, like, I would wake up in the morning and I never had the shakes. I never dealt with any of those pieces.
Wow.
There was no DTs, there was no shakes, there was no jitters, there was no nothing.
Wow.
It was simply just to quiet the noise.
There was just the next drink.
Right.
It was no different than somebody who sips on a bottle of water all day.
Right. Medicine.
It was just what I did. When I got to about 17, 18 is when I started progressing to things outside of alcohol. Started with just weed. And for me, it had a slightly opposite effect to most people, I found.
You didn't get the munchies?
I didn't really get the munchies. It did not make me tired or lethargic or calm. It focused me. I didn't get the hyper piece to it. It just super focused things. And so it helped to combat some of the fuzzy from the alcohol because I was now having to drink so much to quiet the noise. So it helped to balance things. By this point, everything my nickname was roller coaster.
Oh shit.
Everything was trying to balance the highs and the lows. So
you haven't gotten any kind of medical okay. All right.
At this point, there was no trips to doctors. There was no medical diagnoses. There was no even really indication.
She was self-medicating. So
Yes.
No. I understand that.
Right.
I just making sure somebody from the back end. Anyways,
No, at this
so you
point,
didn't have your parents going, we got to take you to psychiatry.
No, at this point, it was because of the way that I was self-medicating.
Yeah.
The extremes weren't as apparent.
Gotcha.
Yes, I was a moody teenager.
Yeah.
Most people chalked that up to I was a hormonal female,
Right. Okay.
right?
Yeah.
If I would get too far out of line, my mom would call up my trainer and she'd be like, oh my God, she's losing her mind today. I'm sending you to her, fix her. I would go out to the barn and I would work my tail off for an entire weekend.
Gotcha.
And that was my reset.
Right. Yeah. Gotcha.
The physical labor, the outlet.
Right.
And I felt better. So that was kind of how things got managed.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know there was a problem.
Right.
Right. So 18, 19 is when I had started smoking weed. I graduated high school, went off to college for a couple of years. The drinking and the smoking continued. Was about and progressively things started getting worse at this point. I started running with different crowds. I started running with worse people.
Did you do anything other than pot?
Not yet.
Oh, but you did.
I did. Yes. At that point, I hadn't
Fucking
yet.
Rob, you get excited.
I did progress to other accelerants. Yes.
Was there a chicken on your farm?
Brought to you by powdered accelerants.
So I started hanging out with individuals who did more than just smoke weed, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't doing it yet, but I started circling in those crowds.
The rodeo people like to party.
They do. And funnily enough, that was not my circle.
Really?
No. I was hanging out with the Wampton people who were not the cowboys.
Oh.
So, I would almost every day for that last year or so of college, I was driving back and forth between Fresno and Waterford every day.
Wow. That's a poke. It's a lot of driving.
I would go to classes. I would come back to Waterford. And I would run with this crowd who were all into drugs and other things. And then I would 3-4 o'clock in the morning, fly back down the freeway to Fresno, go back to school for a little while. Sometimes on the weekends, I would stay up there. I had made friends with some of the girls I had gone on an equestrian team scholarship. So I'd made friends with some of the girls on the team who were part of a sorority. It was a dry house.
Oh, shit.
I had an apartment off campus.
Of course.
That's where you two get along.
So I was
Gotta
the
get in my
house.
field.
Right. So I was the house
Long
that
before
everybody
we ever
came
met.
to on a weekend when they wanted to party and they wanted to
Damn
drink.
it, that sounds familiar, John.
Right. And when I wasn't partying there, I was coming here. So and that all just continued to get worse and worse. So at this point, consequences are getting worse, right? I'm now lying to my parents about where I am. They're finding my truck in town at 1 o'clock in the morning because they're getting phone calls from people that I'm not where I said I was. People are seeing me start to wander around town and I'm not supposed to be here. I had one evening where my parents got a call at 11, 12 o'clock at night from someone who was pissed at me. And they had gone over to where I had stashed my truck and slashed all 4 of my tires. And they called my parents
Oh, they were
and
pissed.
said that they had found my car on the side of the road and wanted to know if I was okay and told my parents where my car was. And I was
Damn
supposed
it.
to be in Fresno.
Damn it.
So those types of consequences now
Right.
had started stacking up with my family, not necessarily with legal issues, but with my
Right.
family. That last year that I was in college, I got pregnant. And I it was the weirdest feeling in the world. So I woke up the next morning, ran into the bathroom, threw up everything but my hopes and dreams, looked in the mirror and just knew.
Really?
Instantly. I just knew. I don't know how I knew. I can't explain the feeling. I just knew.
Yep. Hotter God.
So, right. So, I made the decision to move home because obviously being there was not a good idea because I couldn't trust me with me.
Oh, yeah.
So you about 20 at this time, 20 years old?
I'm 20, yes, at this point. So I moved back home. I got an apartment here in town. I got myself a job and I am completely clean and sober at this point. Like from the moment I woke up that morning and figured out that I was pregnant, I stopped everything. Completely white knuckling it. Sober is a bit of a stretch. Completely white knuckling it at this point, right? But I'm dry. Put it that way.
God, that's
Not under the influence.
That's just a nasty word for me.
And I'm now trying to fight hand, tooth, and nail to keep my fingertips on the edge of feeling normal.
Right.
I make it through that 9 months. My pregnancy itself was a struggle. I almost died. My body, my son was doing beautifully. My body was killing itself to make it happen. I already have hormonal issues. My body doesn't do pregnant well. So by the time I hit about 6 months, my internal organs and stuff were starting to fail. Whoever named it morning sickness ought to die really painfully and slowly. Because it was from the minute I became slightly coherent in the morning until I crashed that night and went to sleep, kind of a deal. But that last 3 months of my pregnancy, it was like a light switch went off. I was fine.
Really?
I gained the 60 pounds back. All my functions were doing great.
Wow.
It was just overnight. I was fine. So had my son. He was born 2 months before I turned 21.
Okay.
So I'm now single mom taking care of my son. My dad was, bless his heart, was my built-in babysitter. So I didn't have to work to pay a babysitter. My son got to stay with family. I was working and going back to school. Still, let's say, not hanging out with the best crowd, but staying dry and clean at this point. Trying to figure out how to be normal because that's all I wanted was just to be normal.
Whatever that means.
Whatever that meant.
Thank you, Rob. Yeah.
And my thought of that at that point was like my mother. I wanted to be normal like my mother. She has been through a lot of shit in her life. And in my perception, has always walked through that with so much grace and dignity that I wanted to be normal like mom.
Wow.
Which comes into play later. So was going through all of that. When my son was about 6 months old, I had someone break into my apartment and attack and rape me with my son asleep on the couch 6 feet away from me.
You're in town?
Yes. I absolutely fell apart. Now, part of what plays into this is the fact that with my mental health disorders that I have, I call her number 8. That's that voice. She is, you talked about in the beginning of this, how words matter.
Extremely. Yeah.
No one can tear me down or apart faster than she can.
Okay. I understand.
Everything that happens around me, to me, or to anyone in my vicinity is wholeheartedly my fault. Whether I had anything to do with it or not. And that is not it's not a poor me. It's when that thought process starts, It starts out little things. It's almost like being in an abusive relationship, right?
Internal abusive.
Yes.
Yeah.
It starts out with the little things.
Yeah.
Well, that was a stupid thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, you look horrible in that dress.
Yes.
Right? Like it's the little things.
Mm-hmm.
And then before I know it, she has progressed to that person broke into your apartment and raped you because you're not good enough to have any different.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I had been struggling so hard during my pregnancy and that's 6 months of his life to try to be normal and be a functioning, productive mom for him. Mm. And then this thing happens that is all my fault in my head.
Right.
I couldn't protect him. Mm. I wasn't good enough to have any better than that. I didn't deserve to have him. Mm. Wow. So from that point, over the next 2 months is when my fall happened. It took 2 months from start to finish before I started skidding the bottom. I called up one of the people that I was running around with that I knew did methamphetamines. Mm. Told them, either you provide it to me in the next 20 minutes or I'm going to find someone who will.
What made you go to that? You never done it before that.
So one of the things I hadn't touched on yet is the fact that leading up to this point in my life, I had already attempted suicide on at least 3 occasions and it didn't work.
Okay.
I had tried to hang myself.
Wow.
The steel choke chain broke. Mm. I jumped off a bridge and woke up 3 hours later and walked away. There had been a lot of bottoms in my life to this point, and none of it worked. My air quotes here joke up to that point had been, there's this saying, heaven doesn't want me and hell is afraid I'll take over. Right. That was the running joke that I would say out loud. Mm-hmm. But the first part of that, I wholeheartedly believed.
Mm-hmm. Of course we do.
Of course.
Right.
We don't deserve. Right. Absolutely.
And so my thought now at that point was, I obviously can't even kill myself properly.
God damn.
So I'm going to do it on the installment plan because a physical body can only take so much abuse before it quits.
None of this you were thinking about your son during this period of time.
The only thing I could think for him at this point was that I didn't deserve him and he deserved better than anything I could ever do for him.
Yep.
So in that next 2 months, I dropped out of all of my classes at school. I turned in a 2-week notice on my job. I signed guardianship of my son over to my parents. I turned in a 30-day notice to my apartment. Mm-hmm. I turned off all of my utilities and I was done.
You scheduled it. Wow. That just gave me
I don't
chills.
do anything by half measures. And if I'm going down with everything I've got. Because I didn't deserve anything different. Mm. So that then continued this decline and the drinking and smoking anything I could get my hands on. Because I knew that my body would only take so much before it would finally quit. It had gotten to the point where I was still going over to my parents' house on weekends to see my son. I was going to, I went to his first birthday. I went to his second birthday. I was showing up for family functions the best that I could, all while trying to eliminate myself from the equation.
Did your parents have any idea that you were on this? It had to be pretty obvious.
At this point, they absolutely knew.
Right.
And were doing everything that they could think of to try to help me. At one point during that stint, they had taken me down to SRC and tried to put me into the inpatient program. And I absolutely freaked out, because after having been attacked, I didn't trust people. And now I was going to be locked in a building with a bunch of men I didn't know.
That had to be scary.
It was terrifying.
Yes, I can imagine.
And so my parents met me halfway, and I did an inpatient program, or an outpatient program, excuse me. I was 3 days away from completing that outpatient program, where I had stopped doing everything other than smoking weed. I will be completely honest about that, because at that point, I was never going to give that up. That was the one thing that still helped quiet the voices and help me focus. So I was 3 days away from completing, and my social worker, my welfare worker, called me and told me that if I didn't drop out of the program and show up on her doorstep that day, she was going to drop me from her program because it wasn't a welfare to work sanctioned program.
I don't understand that. What does that mean?
So when you're on welfare and you're receiving food stamps or cash aid or whatever, there are certain work programs or programs that are sanctioned by welfare that you're allowed to do and maintain your income if you're not working.
Okay.
Going through an outpatient program was not a welfare to work sanctioned program. So I had to quit or lose my welfare.
Okay.
So I quit my outpatient program and went back off the rails because, again, I didn't even deserve to be sober. I didn't deserve to have that. It wasn't until my son was about 2.5, almost 2.5. And I had showed up at my parents' house one day to visit him, and we were sitting out in the backyard, and I had him sitting in my lap. My parents were sitting in chairs next to me, and my mom is upset and crying because this side of death's door, I weighed, I think, a total of 98 pounds at that point. I am 5'10".
Yeah, I was gonna say
98
you're not
pounds is not pretty.
You're not
right?
short. No.
She's definitely taller than Rob and I.
So, they had done everything they could to help me, and they're watching me die in front of their eyes, right? And my mom asked me, sitting there in the backyard, what was it I wanted? Because they couldn't figure out how to help me anymore. What did I want?
It's
And that was the first time that I had ever voiced out loud to anyone, let alone to her, that all I wanted was to die. Obviously, she was a little upset by that.
Well, I can imagine.
She got up and walked in the house. My dad just kind of shook his head and looked at me and walked away and went in the house after Mom.
What can a parent even say at that point?
There was nothing they could say.
Nothing.
But you know why this podcast started, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, you're hitting on it. Yeah.
And I knew that I had just broke their hearts.
Right.
But and I hadn't said it to try to be hurtful.
Nope.
I hadn't said
Absolutely
it to
not.
try to get anything.
Absolutely not.
It's honestly all that I wanted at that point.
They asked what you wanted.
Right. And I'm sitting there and I'm crying because I know that I just broke their hearts. And I never wanted that. And I went to stand up with my son to walk him into the house. And he started crying, and he turned around in my arms, and he wrapped his arms around my neck and told me, "Mommy, I'm sorry. Please don't leave me. I'm sorry."
As if he did something wrong.
Because for some reason, at 2.5 years old, he thought my being an utter fuck up was somehow his fault. That was my first moment of, I have to do something different.
I know.
Because no matter what I felt about me or what I thought of me,
Right.
I never wanted him to think that it was his fault, any of it.
Right.
So I calmed him down for a minute, and then I went in the house with him. And I asked my dad if I could borrow the phone and a phone book.
Where this is going.
And I went back out in the backyard and I started circling numbers in the phone book that I thought might help, might do anything. And I started making phone calls. And one of the phone calls I made was to the MAT team. And it is a mental health assessment team. Because at this point, I hadn't even really, I knew that the drugs and the alcohol were a problem, obviously. But for me, they were a tool.
Yes.
There was a problem that I needed help with. I just didn't know what it was. I knew a little bit about mental health because of some of the issues that my father had from Vietnam.
Right.
And I knew that something had to change.
That's pretty incredible that deep into your addiction that you had the mental clarity to go there. Right. I mean, that's God.
Yes.
There's no other way to put that.
So I made the phone call and I got, it's a 24-hour mental health line for like crises, emergencies, things of that nature. And spoke to the individual on the phone, and they asked me if I was if I was someplace I was going to be safe for the next few minutes, if they could put me on hold and make a phone call. So I did. And they got a hold of a young adult mental health center in downtown Modesto called Josie's Place.
Yep.
And they got on the phone with me, talked to me for a little bit, asked me if I had, because this was on a Friday, asked me if I had someplace safe to stay for the weekend and could I be on their front door at 6:00 on Sunday or on Monday morning. I told them I didn't have any place to stay because at that point I was not allowed to stay at my parents' house.
Okay.
I hadn't been allowed to stay there for quite a while because at that point that was Braden's home and that was where he was safe.
Right.
And I understood that and I supported that because I was not safe. I was not okay. And it ceased to be my home anymore at that point. So was talking to the director on the phone and he was asking me if I had any place I could stay, if I had a way to get there on Monday. I told him that I was currently calling from my parents' house, but I couldn't stay there. So he asked if he could talk to one of my parents on the phone. So I stepped in the house and I handed the phone to my dad. And he talked to them for a minute. They agreed to let me stay for the weekend, provided I didn't leave the house. I didn't do anything illegal while I was in the house. And I was still there to be, and they would drive me in on Monday morning. So I made the deal with them. I got off the phone. And I went in, I took a shower. They fed me dinner because God knows when the last time I ate had been. And I went to bed. And I think I probably slept pretty much the whole weekend away. Because at least if I was sleeping, I couldn't hear the voices. Braden would come in periodically and curl up in bed with me, and I would wake up and chat with him and talk to him and whatever else. And then he'd get down and go in the other room and I'd go back to sleep. Monday morning, my dad took me in and delivered me to their front door, to Josie's Place. And the director was there waiting for me. And they set me up with their psychiatrist and a case manager. And I started working with them. They started out, they put me up in a hotel for a couple of days on kind of like a free pass because I had no place to sleep. That was probably one of the most scary experiences.
Oh, I bet.
That I had in a long time.
Because you're around a bunch of strangers, unsupervised at this point.
Yes, and
Right.
and it was like the Travelers Motel or some such thing over off of the end of Kansas.
Needham.
Yeah, over there. I'm watching these guys doing drug deals outside my window on the landing, and all I can think of is I'm terrified. I don't know all these strange people. They're doing drugs out here, and half of my brain is like, oh, we can go knock on that door, and we can go knock on that door, and we can go knock on that door. And the other half of my brain is like freaking out because I don't want anything to do with any of these people or anything that's going on. So I called my parents, and they showed up to bring me food and things to get me through a couple of days. So I had something to eat and to sit with me for a little while, so I wasn't by myself.
They bring your son?
They did.
Okay.
Now you also have to understand, I've got all these people who watched me walk into this hotel room and get left by myself. And so there's these guys that are pacing up and down and knocking on my door and whatever else. So my dad is like the epitome of old redneck cowboy. Okay. Drives, the big Ford 1-ton truck and wears this, huge 10-gallon cowboy hat, goes nowhere without his cowboy hat, his boots, and his belt buckle. Right. And so these guys are standing on the landing, watching him and my mother crawl out of this big truck and start walking up to my room, and they all start kind of migrating away from my door down the landing. And they came in and sat with me for a while and whatever, and then they left. And I never saw another person come near my door, right? Strange how that happens. But it was kind of funny to me at the time.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason that struck out to me, because later that became one of my coping skills. But at the time, I went through this hotel stay, and then they got me a bed at the respite house over on 5th Street. And I was there. It's a 7-day stay, short term.
Mm-hmm.
My case manager worked with them and my psych to keep me there for 33 days while I called 3 times a day, every day, waiting for my bed in SRC in the residential program. And as long as I kept making that phone call, they would let me stay another night.
Right.
At the time, the SRC program, they had the regular track for individuals who were just dealing with drug or alcohol abuse. And they had the COT track for people with co-occurring disorders.
Mm-hmm.
By this time now, having worked with the psych and my case manager for over a month, I now had received my diagnoses. I now had a name for what was wrong with me. I was still struggling at that point because I was broken. And not in the sense of I had hit rock bottom broken, in the sense of I actually was wired wrong, broken.
Did that give you some relief?
No.
Really?
No.
Because even when they gave you, say, we know what's wrong with you, that didn't give you any relief.
No, because at that point I still didn't think there was anything that could fix me.
Okay. You were still beating yourself up.
Yes.
Number 8.
Right.
I didn't stop beating myself up and start to forgive myself until I was about 5 years sober.
Oh, wow. Going back to that again.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So at that point, they didn't have a cot bed opening up in SRC because the COT program lasted longer than 28 days. Mm-hmm. So they didn't have a bed opening up in that part of the program for a couple of months. But SRC agreed to let me come into the regular track if I continued to see my psych and my case manager several times, like 2-3 times a week. They would come pick me up, or they would come and meet me there and meet with me. I had to stay on my medication, all of those things. So I had all of these regimented deals basically that I had to make to be able to get in. And I didn't know what any of that was going to be able to do for me. I just knew it had to do something. So I went through this 28-day program. I continued to work with my psych and my doctor and my case manager. I completed SRC. About a week before I completed, I think that the entire time I was there, I saw my SRC case manager like once.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know that he know what to do with me.
That's kind of what I was thinking too.
Might as well stay out of the way because she's got
right.
They've been working with her. They got a pattern going. Leave
You also have to remember too. So I'm a dual diagnosed individual on a regular track, working with case managers who don't know how to deal with me.
Right.
Right. The first 3 days that I was in SRC, all I did was sit in the middle of my bed cross-legged and cry and rock. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I was terrified of everyone and everything.
Do you know what kind of drugs they had you on at that point? What kind of medication?
I do,
Okay.
yes. So at that point, I was on, funnily enough, I was on Seroquel, which is what I take now. Now I was on a much, much more significantly higher dose than I am now. But also, too, I was still periodically using while I was at the respite house, which my case manager and everyone knew. Okay. Because
using pot?
I was still smoking weed periodically. I was still using meth periodically. I hadn't really been drinking at that point, but I was still using chemical friends because.
And what is Seroquel?
So Seroquel is a psychiatric medication. Right. It's used for a couple of different things, but one of the largest is it's a mood stabilizer. So one of my diagnoses is that I am bipolar, which looking back now, knowing what I do about it and about my self-medication tactics is why I was a roller coaster. Because with bipolar disorder, you have depressive swings. And
Isn't that the kind of bipolar? You just boom, boom.
Yes, you have depressive swings and you have manic swings. So whenever I would start a manic swing, I would do what I needed to come back down to level. Whenever I would start a depressive swing, I would do whatever I needed to do to come back up to level. Everything was about finding normal. If I was too high or too low, I had to do something to come back to normal.
Isn't that funny though that she's saying that she's dealing with a real medical? I mean, it's that's chemical,
and that's the way I use my.
I was going to say, thank you.
To try to find that balance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
So all of that played into what I did and when, right? But now here I am in this facility with a bunch of people I don't know, in a room with 4 other women that I don't know. I don't trust women. I don't like women. I don't get along with women at this point, right?
Right.
I grew up on a cattle ranch and I am daddy's shadow.
Right.
Right. So women and I don't mix well at this point. I don't know what to do with them. I don't know how to talk to them. I don't know how to handle them. The catty and the two-faced and at least when you're dealing with a bunch of guys, they'll tell you exactly what they're thinking and exactly what they feel.
And we're not too hard to fucking figure out either.
No.
Right. And so I'm trying to deal with those dynamics. I'm absolutely terrified. I'm going stir crazy because I'm locked inside, and the only sliver of peace I can find at this point is when I'm outside. Now I can walk out the door anytime I want to. They're not locked from the inside, but I can't go back in.
Yeah.
Then there's a smoking area out in the back, but everybody's out there smoking, which means I have to go out there with all of those people that I don't know while I'm crawling out of my skin.
Right. Social anxiety.
I don't even like me.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't in years. And I'm going to go try to be normal or pretend like I'm okay because I still think that's what I have to do around people out there with all these strangers that I don't know.
Without the alcohol, without them crutches.
Without anything to help me feel normal. Right. And so somebody else's case manager, one of my roommates, apparently after the 3 days of my sitting in my room crying, decided that maybe somebody should come talk to me. So she went and talked to her case manager, who came in to talk to me. And I don't even think I could string an intelligible sentence together at this point. I was just out of my mind. But she managed to get out of me that I just wanted to go outside and I couldn't go out with people. So she happened to be running the parent group night that afternoon, the meeting that was happening across the parking lot. She made a deal with me that she would allow me to come outside with her if I would stay in the little grassy square right outside the reception window and she was going to be in the room across the parking lot to get set up and ready for the parents' meeting. But I couldn't leave the grass. There was a brick border on one side and a sidewalk on the other two. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't touch the brick border or the sidewalk,
you're good to go.
Then I was good. And when she was done, she would take me back inside because I didn't want to leave, but I couldn't stand anything.
Right.
Everything was overwhelming. So we went out and she sat me down on the grass. And I remember sitting there and about 10 minutes later, she had kind of poked her head out. And once I sat down, I don't really remember anything. So this was her retelling me what she witnessed over the next hour. She stuck her head back out and I had taken off my shoes. And I was sitting on the grass with my bare feet on the grass.
Grounded.
Yes. And I was just sitting there with my hands and my feet on the grass with my eyes closed. And I was just sitting there. But I had stopped crying and I had stopped rocking.
Peace.
And then she came out about 20 minutes later to check. And I had laid over on my side on the grass and was kind of curled up in the fetal position and I had fallen asleep. And when she got done with all of her prep work and everything, at the end of that hour, she came out to get me, but I was still asleep. And she didn't want to wake me up because it's the first time I'd slept in 3 days. So she went and talked to the girls inside and they just let me, she went back across the way and she did her parent meeting and they just let me sleep. And about 2.5 hours later, when everything was said and done, they came out, they woke me up and they took me back inside. And that night was the first night that I actually left my room for dinner. After everybody else had gone to bed for the night and finished their routines, she came in and got me so that I could go take a shower.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't be that unprotected with people moving around. So that was kind of the start of my being able to function.
Okay.
While I was in there.
That was your moment, your moment to reverse the darkness a little bit.
A little bit.
Yep.
I got to recede out of the shadow just a little bit.
Just enough to see it.
Mm-hmm.
God.
Yeah. It was a moment where it was one of the first times in a long time that I had allowed myself to recognize somebody doing something for me that was good.
Right.
Because you could do a million good things for me or around me and my brain didn't even catalog it because I wasn't worth anything good. It was a sliver.
Right.
Right.
That's all you needed. Reverse something.
Yes. And so that started my opening up.
Yeah.
While I was in there. I even managed to make a couple of friends with my roommates. You know, I managed to figure out, okay, how do I talk to another female? Right.
Enlighten us.
Carefully. That's how, but I managed to be like, okay, I could have a conversation with people.
Right.
And not be afraid. I could go sit in a group with people and not be afraid. It became the running. So me and the 4 girls that were in my room, and then there was a group of 3 or 4 guys who they had all kind of come in at the same time. Now they had all come in about 3 days behind me, but none of them knew it because nobody ever saw me. Right.
You were brand new to them.
Yes, exactly. So even though I'd been there a couple more days, nobody knew the difference. Well, you have to remember I hit SRC at 98 pounds soaking wet, right? I was wearing 00 pants with sweats underneath them to keep them up. And at 5'10", that is terrifying. Yeah. I was hungry for the first time in years. And I was hungry all the time.
It hasn't stopped.
No. So, you get, you go up to the counter and they portion your food out for you and then you go sit down. And if you can eat fast enough, if there's seconds, you can go back in line, but you have to have eaten everything on your plate. Right now, mind you, at this point in my life, I am a really picky eater.
Yeah.
Till I got to SRC. And then if it hit my plate, I don't even know what it tasted like. Like, I ate it anyway. And so if I hadn't finished, it got to the point after that first week, everybody's watching me eat, and they're all like, they all know I need food. So my roommates would all, if I hadn't finished my plate yet, they would start dumping their trays onto each other's so that they could jump up in line to go get me more. Like, just little things that.
Did you recognize you were creating those bonds?
That's where I
click?
started to see it.
So
yes.
Everything's starting to reverse.
I had
at this
started
point.
to see these little connections that weren't bad.
Right.
Right. Now, I didn't feel like I deserved them by any means. And I still
had number 8 talking.
Yes. And I still felt like I was waiting for the shoe to drop.
Oh yeah.
There's always another shoe, right?
That's how I felt early sobriety.
Right.
So I'm always waiting for the shoe to drop. I'm waiting for the rug to get pulled out from underneath me, but I'm recognizing and appreciating the little connections as they come, which I hadn't done in a really long time.
Right.
So I graduate from the 28-day program. I go into an SLE.
In Modesto?
Mm-hmm, okay. In Modesto. And my case manager helped me through a program that they partnered with, helped me to get a job so that I could pay rent and have a place to live. Because at that point, it was actually somebody else's case manager who helped get me connected to the SLE and work out the agreement for me to be able to stay there.
That's
until
sober
I
living.
got
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
yes, thank you. A sober living environment.
Right.
Because had I not been given that opportunity, I was going back under the bridge because that's where I'd been living for about 2 years. I didn't have any place else to go. And so that was kind of my start. Now,
where were your parents at this point now? At this point?
They came to see me once parent visits were allowed and I was out of my blackout period. They brought Braden and came to see me every weekend. Okay. They were wholeheartedly supportive.
Good.
But struggling with how to recognize the difference between helping and enabling.
Okay.
And that's a fine line.
Were they getting help?
Yes. So they had started coming to the parent nights.
Okay. Now let me ask you another question. Your dad being the hard-headed redneck he was, how is he dealing with the mental health side of this? Because if he's any redneck like the rest of us, fuck it, get over it. You know what I mean?
Rub some dirt on it, kids.
Right.
Let's go.
Because my father is also manic depressive.
Okay. He understood it.
Yes.
Okay.
So he had a much easier time understanding
Than mom?
than mom did.
Oh, wow.
Now,
Okay.
mom desperately wanted to understand. She desperately
Mom sounds
wanted
like a
to do
badass.
anything she could to help me. But she, to that point in her life, had never struggled with any type of depression or mental health issues.
She didn't with your dad? She didn't deal with it with your dad?
Mom was tough.
She
Well, obviously.
understood it from a theological perspective.
Okay.
From being explained to her. She never experienced it herself.
Okay.
It wasn't until years later, after her second cancer surgery, she went through a bout of depression after she had surgery.
Okay.
There's
a whole much more there going on when you just
that cancer
we didn't even talk about that.
That cancer is something, baby.
That's when she started to really be able to understand from a different perspective.
More empathize now.
Right. Because throughout the course of my sobriety, she and I will sit down and we get into these like theological discussions, and she will ask me questions, you know, what does this feel like? What is this thought process for you? What does this voice tell you? She wants to understand. You can only understand so much from it being told to you.
Okay, if you haven't experienced it, it's like one alcoholic working with another.
Absolutely.
You know.
Correct.
Absolutely.
And so through all of this, my parents have been amazing. The support and the understanding and the curiosity and the drive to help me with anything they can has been immeasurable. It took me, I was about 18 months sober when I really got into the first in-depth conversation with my mom. And it was the first time that my drive to be normal like her just got ruptured to pieces.
I'm laughing because I know what she's going to say next.
So I was having this conversation with my mom because I was still struggling at this point, right? they're still trying to get my meds figured out. They're still trying to get dosages figured out. By 18 months sober, I'd been through 4 sponsors already. Like I had struggled.
Did you, let me ask you, were these all female sponsors?
Yes.
Did you ever think about maybe I should get a male sponsor?
I did not at that point because we were told you couldn't. And so I was struggling. I was really struggling. Putting everything I had into it, but struggling. And I was having a conversation with my mom about the mental struggles I was going through. I was still working with my psychiatrist. I was still working with my mental health case manager. I was reading the book. I was going to meetings. I was chairing meetings. I was doing all of these things, but I was still struggling. And I was talking to her about, my perception of what I was trying to be, because she was trying to understand why I was struggling, what I was struggling to get to. And that was the first time I had told her that I just wanted to be like her. I just wanted to be normal. And she laughed at me. And she told me, "Oh, honey, there's no such thing as normal. It's a setting on a dryer."
Dude, but that's so profound.
It is true.
I know you are.
Come on.
I was laughing, right? Because I've heard this before.
We
If
were
she's not
driving
wrong.
and I just sat there.
Ain't it funny?
Like-
how simple as shit.
It's just, it doesn't get any more simple than that, right?
No.
It's just to say,
Like I didn't even have a reaction. I was just dumbfounded because, well, shit, what do I do with that? Right? And I think I finally looked at her and I was like, you have just shattered my whole outlook on life. And she said, good.
Yeah, good. What's normal?
That's a solid impression of her mom, by the way.
Yeah. She said, good. Now, what are you going to do about it?
That's what my sister told me when I was, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And from that point, I figured out that I could rebuild and change
Right. Nice.
what I was trying to get to. Because this ideal that I had been holding on to since childhood.
Chasing after something you didn't even know how to catch.
Yeah. I didn't even know how to explain it
Not
to
even
you.
possible.
Yeah.
Right?
Other than at the
I
laundromat.
figured out that there was a difference between attainable and unattainable and realistic versus non-realistic.
How old were you at that point?
But also you got a chance to set your own goal. Okay, now I get to set my own marker.
Yes. I was about 25 at that point.
Okay.
Just a kid.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I was so deep in my addiction at 25 years old. That wasn't even funny.
But the funny thing is, was because when I'd hit my ass in the hallway, and I was swollen, shiny,
Right.
yellow eyes, done alcohol, my body wouldn't process liquor. Here comes my sister, and I'm crying. Baby, what's wrong? I said, I'm an alcoholic. And she says, I know. What do you want to do about it? Like kind of like your mother did, just
Yeah.
and like that never occurred to me. I thought I was just going to die with this.
Yes. And that was where I kind of started from the mental health side of it. I started really doing a lot of digging.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to understand how my brain worked and why I thought the things that I did in order to change the things that I thought. So I started taking mental health classes, trying to get a better because I was working 2 jobs part-time during the day, and then I was going to school at night. And so I switched from just doing general ed classes to doing behavioral health classes. I wanted to understand why
taking control of your own situation.
My brain worked the way that it worked. Right? What was different? And that was when I started to realize that, okay, different doesn't have to mean broken.
Right.
Words matter.
Yes.
So I think differently.
Yeah.
So I have to process differently. Doesn't mean it's good or bad. It's just different.
Right.
Right. Then I had to learn to apply that to my drug and alcohol use, because my thought process was why I used drugs and alcohol to self-medicate. But the behavioral drive to self-medicate wasn't gone. Not yet.
Say that again. Back up. Say that again.
My thought process is why I used and drank to self-medicate. Right? My desire to drink and use wasn't there, but the desire to self-medicate still was.
Okay. So the obsession was gone.
Right.
But you were still trying to figure out how to fix it.
Yes.
Okay.
I was still trying to find appropriate coping mechanisms.
But keep it in mind, in her mind, okay, drugs and alcohol are out of the picture to cope with. Now I got to find different tools.
Right. Those aren't getting me to a normal that I thought was normal.
There is no.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That shit I was using to try and get normal, but it destroyed my body.
Right.
So I
got to do.
I can't use these. So what am I going to use now?
Right.
So now
she's searching.
Use?
Right.
Now she's searching.
Right.
Correct. So in order to figure this out, I had to understand me, because there are textbook coping skills, right? There are textbook coping mechanisms that you can read in just about any book on any diagnosis you get your hands on. But every person is different. So what coping skill might work for you may not work for me, or what works for me may not work for you, right?
Kind of like the program.
Right.
Yes.
And it's got to be kind of malleable.
Different.
It's got to be kind of malleable too, because we're ever changing. You got to be able. It's got to.
Absolutely. So, and it also, okay. So one of my coping skills is my animals. When
No chickens though, right?
we do have chickens.
Keep them away from
They're
John.
my dad's mostly though. So, you know,
I get that.
but so one of the things that I figured out,
but that was also one of your coping skills as a child.
That's where I was just going with that. Yes. So one of the things that I figured out is going back through with my psych, going back through my chain of events throughout my life. Where was the last place, or what was the last thing I was doing where I felt safe, where I felt at peace, where I had any sense of serenity or belonging? The one place that always gave that to me
Was the first farm.
was my animals. That is one of my coping skills.
You notice they're not human.
No, they're not. They don't judge. They don't hurt on purpose or just because. I won't say they don't hurt on purpose, because if you hurt them, they'll hurt you back.
Oh, yeah.
If, things of that nature. But for the most part,
And
they
you're
are
also
not malicious.
a nurturer.
Yes.
You want to be taking care of someone it gives you purpose to take care of.
Right. And if you take care of them, they take care of you.
Absolutely.
Right. So, that became one of my coping skills, right? I started collecting critters. But I can't take my critters with me everywhere. I can't go walk through the grocery store with my horse. That kind of draws the wrong kind of attention.
Damn it.
Right? So okay, now I need more than one coping skill. So
It's like
I
our
had
tools, spiritual
yes.
tool, our toolbox.
That's exactly what it is. I had to start coming up with multiple things that help. Now, in amongst that journey, at about 2 years sober, is when I got connected to my next/last sponsor. She was amazing. She was the only one of my sponsors who really wanted to understand and be able to meet me and support me where I was at any given point. Because she knew that I was going through this mental health journey as well, but had never worked with an individual who was dual diagnosed. So
you said that's twice, dual diagnosed.
Yes.
Bipolar, what was the other one?
So dual diagnosed refers to having mental health diagnoses and also being a substance or alcohol user.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
That doesn't mean you're a meth head and a drunk.
Right.
Right.
That's not dual diagnosis.
Correct.
Because there's two different drugs.
Correct. So I have multiple.
Some people thought that though.
Absolutely. The actual clinical definition of dual diagnosed is
Gotcha.
you are a drug and or alcohol user, as well as having mental health diagnosis.
And it's hard to find those because you got to get rid of the one to see what.
Correct. Which is why when I went through the day treatment the first time, I couldn't let go of everything because I wasn't addressing the problem.
Right.
Right. I was addressing the symptoms and the medication, not the problem.
Right.
So, I was able to finally get through my steps, all of them for the first time.
How'd that feel?
At about 2 years sober.
Were you able to forgive yourself?
No.
Not yet. No, to 5
Not
years you
even.
said.
I was very easily able to forgive other people.
Which is a start.
Making my amends was not horrible to other people. I had, a range of responses. Some people didn't want an apology. They wanted a living amends.
You say that, Rob, sometimes.
Some people...
Oh, I got the gamut, baby.
Some people could see that I was trying and it was like, okay, I can't forgive you yet.
Yeah, let's watch.
You need to give me time.
Yeah, let's watch.
Absolutely. Right. I was lucky in the sense that at that point, none of the amends that I made in the beginning were individuals who were like, fuck you, I want nothing to do with you. Right.
That'd hurt.
And not so much because I did have a couple of those later on. It wasn't so much that it hurt. It was because the mental state that I was still in where everything was all my fault and I didn't deserve anything better.
That'd have been validation.
Correct. Anything like that further validated that voice.
That's right.
Right. So
fucking number 8.
yes.
That'd have the shoe dropping person.
Right.
I, God gave me what I could handle in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like when John talked about his 3 years, God was giving him.
Yep.
We were being able to eat as much as we could take until then finally.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
God's grace is amazing.
And so I was finally able to get through my steps the first time. I was still not able to forgive myself. There was still a lot of growing taking place during all of that. There was still a lot of things about my diagnoses that I didn't understand. And there was a lot of emotional damage that I had done to myself that I still felt like I deserved. So there was a lot of internal struggles that went on during that time, trying to work the program, trying to work my mental health program, trying to follow the rules and the steps, trying to understand what was going on with me, all while fighting this voice that I deserved all of those horrible things. And that I didn't deserve the good things that were starting to come.
The blessings.
Right. There were several different medication changes that took place in that first several years.
And that in itself is a challenge.
It was.
Right.
It reminds me of watching
been-
my sister, a guy diagnosed with epilepsy at 17. We didn't know what was going on with her.
Right.
Then having her, because we didn't understand that. My dad, I don't know if he
Yeah.
ever did understand it, or it was tough.
Yeah, it's not easy. And my mental health being what it is, I don't know if this happens with other individuals. I couldn't tell you, but it takes about a week, and you'll know if that med is going to work or not.
Yeah.
You
Because
didn't figure that out the first couple of times. You had to figure it out after different ones. Okay, then you would,
so basically,
no, it's going to take a week. Wow. That could be
yeah.
a week of hell. That could be a week of joy.
I used to get told when I would switch medicine, it would take 2 to 3 months. Right.
And for some people, it does take a little longer. For me, not so much. I was on one medication day 4. I went into a manic spike. I don't remember the next 3 days. I was told that I went to work. I went to school. I picked up my son from my parents. I had him for the weekend. I took him back to my parents. Because at this point, I had him every other weekend.
Obviously, you must have been a decent human being at the time. To everybody, not even knowing.
Apparently so.
Wow.
Yeah. I was functioning. I was answering questions. I was doing my job. I have no memory.
Almost like being in a
any
good
of it.
blackout.
Kinda. In fact, that was
There is a good blackout.
We're not doing any damage. I mean, come on.
that was one of the only ones I ever had as far as blackouts. I never had blackouts when I was drinking or using. Only in a severe manic episode, and it was terrifying to know that I was driving around town with my son in my car, and I have no idea what I did or where I went.
That's crazy.
Things like that. One of them, they obviously took me off of that medication. They put me on a different one. And within 5 days, I was found locked in the bathroom in the dark, playing with pocket knives with the floor covered in blood.
Wow.
Because I had swung that far, that fast.
You got to come off the one and
into a depressive
find out what this
cycle.
one does. Wow.
So, I luckily didn't have to try very many,
That had to take,
but it was very fast.
That had to take your mom and dad and throw them backwards to see that. to go through that. Or were they prepared for that?
How can you prepare for that?
Well,
I think-
I know what you mean, because they've been through a lot already.
Right.
At this point, some of the more severe pieces they weren't seeing because I didn't live
Gotcha.
at home.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right. So they know about it. I've talked to them about it. I've been honest with them about all of it, even at the times that it was happening. I can't imagine what it felt like for them.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I can imagine. I have kids,
You have a child,
right?
yeah. You have more than one?
So I have one.
Okay.
Between us, we have 5. So, it was a rough go in the beginning. It was. It took me till about the 2-year mark before I got really good and stable on my meds. The one that I'm on now, I've been on for, 14, 15 years. It was actually the medication that they started me on when I first hit SRC.
Which is?
The Seroquel.
There you go.
I was on that for a
And
little
then
while.
we went back to it because the other ones that they tried to put me on were not great.
But now as you age, is it
adjusting
going to,
doses.
because as the body changes
Sure. So what I have found to this point, as I've gotten older, as I've been on it longer, the dosage needed has become less and less.
That's good.
Wow.
That's good.
I'm now on a dose that is so low that they consider it barely a therapeutic dose.
Wow.
Even better.
The only downside to it is because I am on such a small dose, the half-life on it is really small.
Really, yeah, sure.
So if I screw up and I forget to take my meds that night, by the afternoon
look out.
of the next day, things are starting to get funky. Like you can tell I'm off. I'm the very first symptom that I notice is I itch.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay. Physical.
Like-
There's
Physical.
a physical.
Bone deep will like rake holes in my skin because I can't make it stop.
That athlete's foot type of itch. You want to get in there.
Yeah.
Really do.
And
You don't have to double up to catch up, though, do you?
No.
Oh, no, that's bad, right?
well, Yes and no.
Okay.
So because my dose is so low, I have it worked out with my psychiatrist that if I know I'm off and I call it a reset,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
My emotional well-being is not okay. 8 is being a tyrant. I'm just fucking struggling.
Right.
I need a reset. Instead of taking a half of a pill, I take a whole one that night.
Okay.
And it kind of gives my chemical lineup a jump start.
Okay.
Right. But again, the dose that I take is now so small that makes a huge difference. If I was on a much higher dose, that would not be an option for me.
Okay.
And some of that, I have multiple mental health diagnoses, so they sometimes don't play well together.
All right.
You know, I have good days and I have bad days, and let me clarify that term, because it's not a bad day. I am in a bad emotional space. So for me, when I say I'm having a bad day, it's because the emotional headspace that I am in is bad for me.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
When not menopause, sorry, my wife's going to that. When your menstrual cycle comes, does that affect
Absolutely.
and how so?
It absolutely did. So when because your menstrual cycle is hormone driven, right?
Come on.
My diagnoses are all considered mood disorders. So there are different categories of mental health disorders. And they're categorized by whether they're neurological, whether they're hormonal, those types of things. Mine are very much in that hormonal realm. So as my hormones shift and change over the month, it absolutely affects.
I mean, because testosterone levels,
absolutely,
progesterone levels.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, the reason why I struggled so much in my pregnancy is because you have an uptick in that specific hormone.
Mm-hmm.
My body attacks itself when that hormone upticks. That hormone also upticks during your menstrual cycle. Mm-hmm. It's not a pretty combo, right? So, I've been on birth control since I was like 13 because they were trying to regulate my hormonal imbalances.
And it does help a lot of women.
It absolutely does. I've been on the depot shot now for 6 years, 5 years. I haven't had a cycle in like 6 years.
Really?
It's freaking amazing.
Don't tell my wife that.
Oh,
I was really
God.
going to ask you, what's your plan for menopause? I mean, that's got to be...
It's coming.
Cross our fingers and pray and take it one day at a time.
Okay.
Right? There isn't...
I might spend a lot of time at the cabin.
Right. There isn't really a plan per se.
Well, you really can't have one, can you?
No, because you really don't know what's going to happen.
Right. Yeah, it's
one of the things is, and one of the big things is, I am very, very honest with all of my doctors about all of
you have to be
my issues, right? I don't have, I laugh, I say this, I don't have issues, I have subscriptions. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Prescriptions.
that too. You know, my OB knows everything.
As they should.
My GP knows everything. They all have permission to talk to each other.
Need to.
They're all on the same
OB?
page.
Right.
Yeah. So like right now, I have been on my psych medication for so long that I no longer have an actual designated psychiatrist. I have access to them if anything crops up and I need them. But right now my OB manages, she prescribes my psych meds because my psychiatric medication and my female hormone system are so closely tied together. So she and I work really closely on, okay, you know, as far as, hey, look, the depot is managing these things. It's helping with these swings. It's helping with all of these different hormonal imbalances that are feeding in together. And we're watching all of that as time progresses so that when the time comes, she can help me walk through this because I'm obviously not her only patient who is dealing with these types of things. You know, I'm not the only one. Go figure. So there's a lot of things that as I get older, as your hormone levels change, as I get closer to menopause, those types of things, I don't know what that's going to look like. You know, all I can do is be as honest and open with my family and my medical providers about how I'm feeling, what I'm going through, and where I'm at from day to day. And we all play it from there.
Yeah. Now back to AA kind of stuff. Do you sponsor women? Have you taken women through the steps?
I have taken women through the steps.
Has that helped you? How has that helped? Because
the couple of girls that I was able to take through were also individuals who were dual diagnosed.
Did you find them, or because God tends to bring people that we need, or that have similar styles?
Absolutely. So that is very much what I found. They weren't individuals I went looking for. It wasn't anything like that. I didn't even really have my name out there. It was individuals who either became connected to the AA family that we had at the time. By AA family, what I mean by that is we referred to, my sponsor, all of her sponsees, including me, her sponsor, her husband's sponsor, his sponsees, we all were kind of the AA. It was our AA family, right? And so it was individuals who would come into contact with someone in the AA family and then would get brought into the group that way, who would ask me, or if it was somebody who heard me speak in a meeting and saw my name on a women's list, things of that nature. And they were all dual diagnosed. So it was,
was it kind of healing, cathartic for you, being given that nurturing?
It was, in that sense. It was also, it was very rewarding to be able to help somebody else find their understanding of themselves. Because not that I told them anything they couldn't have found out from somewhere else. It wasn't about that. It was being able to support them on that journey, because it's not an easy one to take. No matter whether you're dual diagnosed or not, that journey's not an easy one to take. To be that honest and that brutally open with yourself, let alone anybody else, is hard. But I also struggle with having sponsees.
How so?
Because if they stumble,
I know.
If they struggle,
I know. Come on.
If they're having a hard time, if they go back out, it's my fault.
No, it's not. Number 8.
It's not.
Right.
But my head tells me it is, right? So now logically, I know it's not. Number 8 tells me it is. Now I have to walk through that process and unpack all that baggage again, right? So that's a struggle I deal with.
It's 1,000% why I don't like doing it. I'm going to tell you that right now. It's how I protect myself. I mean, the one we just went through, the one I just was helping, that one I prepared myself up front that he's going to fail, right? And if he doesn't, great, but he's probably going to fail, right? So that, to me, when you go into that kind of sponsorship, you're not giving that person on the other. I'm not giving 100% of me. Because if I have to start that way, I'm not going to do it right. So that
I don't know. You gave that dude 100%. And that,
I did.
You gave that guy
I did, Rob and John, but that
the point I want to whoop his ass.
I gave a lot for that man, but I knew up front that I was probably going to fail.
But you received a lot from it. You didn't fail.
Oh, no, I know I didn't fail.
You just said.
I know I didn't fail. Well,
the mission
was going
to fail.
Hold on. This ain't about me. Heather, I just
No, it's okay.
Hey, you've been doing a great job today, by the way.
You know what? I got it.
Didn't he? Fantastic.
Dude, I don't know if you guys, and I'm...
Yeah, I know.
Dude, I'm giving you
proud
props
of you.
right
He's
now.
awesome.
You've been awesome today. I'm just going to tell you that right now, dude. Like, here you go.
I think it's just too... Obviously, I wasn't nearly in what you went through, right? And knowing what it took for me to get my little bit, right, of what I had to go through, and to sit here and listen to everything that Heather had to go through to get to where you're at, God bless. You are
Perfect words.
powerful.
God bless.
You are a powerful voice.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask this, and then because I think it's extremely important. Are you said you were going to, I got a couple questions.
Okay.
The guy, the piece of shit that raped you, what happened?
Nothing.
Never caught him? Nothing?
So I never reported it
Okay.
because this individual ran down my son and my father's entire itinerary the week prior to him having broken into my house.
So he knew you guys.
Told me that if I said anything, I would never see them again.
Okay.
So I didn't say anything.
It's fine. You don't have to go into details.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
He resurfaced. I ran into this individual 2 weeks after I got out of SRC.
Wow.
Ran into him on the street. And then at the tables at
Inside?
what was my home group at the time.
Wood chipper.
Oh, hold on a second. Wait.
Wood chipper.
Did you have to forgive this man?
I lost a sponsor over that man because when this individual showed up at the table, and I went to my sponsor for help trying to, what do I do with this, right? The fear, the everything. I was told that I was lying and making it up and got fired, basically.
By your sponsor.
By my sponsor.
Fuck that.
And then a week and a half later, this individual was caught masturbating at the table.
Imagine that.
While my sponsor was my ex-sponsor now was chairing the meeting and was kicked out of the room. And I think I saw him once after that at like a grocery store, and I've been blessed to not see them since.
Another question. How's your son?
Amazing. He
Young man now.
Yes, he will be 19 here in a week.
Short order.
He is absolutely, unequivocally my gift from God. That boy has saved my life. I can't tell you how many times. And I tell him that regularly.
At 2.5, he saved your life.
He and I have a very amazing relationship. He tells me everything. I can tell him anything. He can ask me anything and I will tell him. It's been like that his whole life.
Right.
Age appropriately as he was growing up, right? He's one of my best friends. But I am always mom first.
Right.
Amen.
You know, and so he and I have been blessed with being able to now in sobriety have this amazingly beautifully rebuilt relationship with him.
Right.
I got a question. I'm count. My math is off.
Okay,
His,
so
mine, and somebody else's.
yeah, mine, hers, ours, and theirs.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. That's what I was figuring. But
So I have 2 biological children.
Right.
She has 1.
Right. Okay.
And
Where's
then,
the other?
so my oldest daughter has a brother that's 10.5 months younger. Same mother, different father. Not in the picture. I helped raise him.
okay.
And then my youngest son has a sister that's 5 years older. The daughter from my last marriage. You know, she was, you know, my stepdaughter for, you know, over a decade. Right. And in my mind, our mind, that's it. Like, once you're my kid, you're my kid.
Right.
Like, and I don't care what the situation is. And then technically there's 2 more. I have a niece and a nephew that I helped raise too. So that are, you know, whatever. So, I mean, yeah, there's like,
I love it.
The other thing, as you said, you're going to psychology classes. Where are you at with that?
So I have 2 AA degrees in behavioral health and human services.
Good for you.
I have a certification in psychosocial rehabilitation. I worked in mental health for a couple of years.
Okay.
And then when the crash happened in 2008 and they yanked all of the mental health funding and I had to watch all of my clients decompensate and go back into locked facilities, I couldn't keep doing it.
Right.
And so I switched gears. I'm still, I work in HR, so I'm still in a people realm.
Right.
But
that psychology
slightly
works well
different.
there. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Heather, you just, I'm just in awe, really am. I mean, I ask these numbnuts. It takes a lot for my mouth to shut.
He ain't lying.
I mean,
He ain't lying.
I mean, it
He's
just,
not wrong.
I just listening to you speak and how
Told you she spoke well.
eloquently you speak, and you. Okay, besides AA, are you helping? Are you involved somewhere somehow?
So I actively work my program, both of them, because I consider myself as having two programs. I have my AA program.
Absolutely.
And I have my mental health program.
Absolutely.
Now, there are a lot of things that I do for each of those programs that cross over that are very, very similar.
Right.
I do not currently have a sponsor. I do not currently have any sponsees. I haven't for...
You have a home group?
Like the last 10 years. I do not have a home group.
How come?
I lost my home group in my divorce. Was going to the Oakdale Fellowship for one of the Oakdale groups. It was a women's meeting. I was going there for a little while. And then an individual broke my anonymity in that group and started cross-talking about my ex and all of the wonderful things that he was choosing to say about me at that point in his life.
This fucking.
And so I left that meeting and never went back. During COVID, we were doing a meeting in his backyard, actually in Oakdale, in John's backyard for a while.
I heard about that. I was going through cancer at the time, so I couldn't go.
And loved that meeting. And then
Start your own.
Winter came and we...
Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
And then winter came and, we had to stop doing it. The fellowships all started opening back up. Everybody started going back to their home groups, that kind of thing. I go to meetings periodically, but it is a struggle for me. So on top of the bipolar disorder, I also have an anxiety disorder and PTSD that I struggle with.
From the rape, the PTSD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a service dog that I take with me just about everywhere other than work. He's when I can't take the dog.
I actually got a shirt for Christmas.
He did. It says service human, do not pet.
That is hilarious.
So I have my service dog. He's a 140-pound German Shepherd.
I met him.
Yeah. Yes. And so, and not only do I have him for when I'm in public, but one of the biggest triggers for my PTSD is being home alone in dark rooms.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so one of the very first things that I taught him how to do is do room searches when I get home.
Okay.
Things of that nature. So he has very specific tasks that he helps me with. He also will notify me when I am starting destructive physical behaviors that I don't recognize.
Did you train him?
Mm-hmm.
Did you really?
I did, yes. He's the second service dog I've had. My first one was
you
a
ever
Great Dane.
trained for anybody else?
I have not.
Okay.
How old is your dog? This one?
He's 8 now.
When will you start training his?
So it's about
that time. Yeah, he's getting there.
Is there a particular breed that you want? Because you've had Great Dane and German Shepherd. I heard labs are really good at times.
They are. There are a lot of really great ones.
It's more about the dog than the breed.
Yeah.
For me, large breed dogs are a thing because of the nature of my PTSD. Their
that leaves
job,
you out, John. Not a large breed animal.
Their job is to hold my space and my bubble when I am out and about. So where most service dogs will stay, healed up on one side, whether it's your right or your left, depending on the handler, and they don't leave your side. His job is to maneuver around me based on who or what is moving around me.
Buffer zone, basically.
Yeah. Now, have you ever thought of? Have you ever taken self-defense courses to kind of help with that?
I have not.
She can handle her own.
Growing up a country girl, I never really had to worry about that.
No, but a lot of people who have gone through what you've gone through have also taken those steps to help them with their confidence, will help them with the anxiety.
Absolutely. So for me, there's a duality to my reaction to things. So, when there is a threat and I don't have someone or something to help me deal with whatever that is, all emotion shuts off. It's like a light switch. The emotional impact, the emotional registration, all of that flips off.
Okay. So the self-preservation mode.
Yes. If the situation is severe enough, my memory flips off with it. I don't know what I did once the event is over. I simply react.
Sleep with your eyes open, John.
Oh, I'm not worried.
When I have my dog or John or my family with me and I don't have to go into fight or flight mode, my reaction is very different. Right? So when my son was younger, my reaction when I was with him is very different to what it is now. You know, he's 6'2" and 300 and something pounds. He is all corn-fed white boy. Cowboy boots and mullet to go with it, right? Drives a big, Dodge 3500 pickup truck diesel.
I just clicked in my head. I know exactly who he is.
It's Waterford, but it's like,
yes.
You know what?
It's
I've
like a quarter inch.
Born and bred in
Yes.
this town, and this whole conversation, I'm like, how have we not crossed paths before? Because you're,
Yes.
but just that right there.
Clicked.
Yep.
So, those types of reactions shift and change depending on who I'm with, the age of who I'm with, the capability of who I'm with, my trust level of who I'm with.
That's the biggest one.
Absolutely. And so that makes a difference in your reaction, right?
well, preparedness too. Like
Yes.
even like going into, let's say, a crowded restaurant.
Situational awareness.
Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. Situational awareness, right? So we go into a crowded restaurant because I've got a lot of that stuff too. But I always sit my back to the wall
So facing everything.
so
Right.
I can see it.
I know
so
where the
can
exits
see
are.
so
Absolutely.
so I can see everything.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I know what's
I
going
don't
on.
trust anybody, still.
Exactly.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's part of the
Absolutely.
life that I lived.
I don't trust them.
And then it's part of that too. So she's comfortable. Now, if I wasn't there, she'd be in that spot, right?
Yes.
But because I'm there, she can let her guard down and
have my
I
back
can-
to her.
and then I
Now you
take
do the
care
same
of
thing,
all-
like, but even though my wife knows she can see, but there's our exits. You know, there's something. This, I tell my son too. This is the way.
Absolutely.
Oh, I've told my son that
Absolutely.
too. There's sometimes
Well, and-
that I'm going to tell you something that we don't need a reaction. I just
Yeah.
need you to do exactly what I say and when I
Yeah.
say it. And that's
But
just
my
that.
kids are terrible. So like one time,
If you can get them out of their phone.
well, we were driving. Okay, we were driving to the store. Yeah, I'm with him. This is a month or two ago. Just pull up here to Circle K, and there's a gentleman at the edge of the building. You know, I get about seven car, and I'm watching it, and I can see him. We go in, we buy our sodas because we're helping Aaron move. Got back in the car. This guy is now right here by the ice machine, and I go, "You didn't even see him." I go, "Where was he standing when we?" You know, he asked us for money, but you just know those. He was harmless, but you know.
Had he not been,
So we got there. I go, "Son, where was he standing when we pulled in?" I don't know, Dad. He was.
he was way the hell over there.
But they don't even. They're just.
Yeah.
You've got to know.
So that is the one of the things that Braden picked up really, really quickly. So my dad also has PTSD, right? We all grew up with it. Dad always sits with his back to a wall. He always knows where the doors are, those types of things. That was just always a given. Braden grew up with that around my parents as well. The difference being, and maybe it's because of his and my relationship, but because of my PTSD and my need to know surroundings, people, exits, doors, he has always been much more aware of those things as well. Mm-hmm. So even from the time that he was, 3 years old, the very first time it dawned on me that he was intuitively trying to protect and shield me.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't
Just waiting for the time. Let somebody come.
I couldn't decide if I
waiting.
wanted to like smack him or cry, right? Because I
Probably
just
cry.
did. Yes, maybe both. So we were in we had stopped at like a little gas station liquor store. I had to get gas and he wanted a bag of potato chips. He was like 3. So I was very, very shortly sober. And we had walked in and there was someone, like I could see the guy kind of standing in the parking lot, and he had walked in the building behind us, and there was just something about him that I was off. It made me feel off. Right. And already at that age, Braden could pick up on that reaction in me.
In you.
Wow.
And
just like a dog
at 3, he automatically started trying to position himself between me and this person. Right. And I couldn't tell if I was like, get up here. And he's like, no, Mom, I'm fine. Just keep walking, Mom. I'm fine. Child.
Yeah.
I love you, but I'm going to beat you. Get up here, you know? But he has been that way his whole life. Like, he's just very, very aware. He has always been my old soul. And so watching the difference in the way that he picks up on those types of things versus some of his friends when he was younger was where I really started seeing the difference in how my experiences and how what I deal with changes and affects his reality as well. So I always wanted to make sure that no matter what question he asked, no matter what had happened throughout the day, he knew there was a difference between do this, don't ask questions, I'll explain later. Or, hey, we can have a discussion about this now. Or you've pushed enough buttons. We have a code, he and I, from the time he was little bitty. He will push for something because either he wants something or he wants to do something or he wants to discuss something. And if we're in a situation where I have a limited capacity to deal with stimuli, once I've hit a certain point, I will ask him, is this the hill you want to die on? And he will either tell me yes or no. And it's a blunt question.
Yeah.
It's not what's said with an attitude. It's not anything. It's just, is this the hill you want to die on today? And he will tell me yes or no.
Right.
And if he tells me no, then okay, you're being a smart ass. Mom's had enough. We're good.
Right.
Like, drop it. If he tells me yes, then he knows that as soon as we get home, we're going to sit down and we're going to discuss it because this is obviously something that's important to you, you know? But so those are some of the things that not just him, that my family, we have figured out these kind of little codes and quirks to be able to work our way through situations.
And that's love.
Absolutely.
You don't work those out with people that you, that's how you display
that's love.
love.
That's trust. That's support. That's all of it.
All right, listen.
Yeah.
I could literally sit here for hours and listen to you speak, Heather. I really could. I would
This
like
one
to
and
get
Rachel's so refreshing on the same one.
Well, here's what let's do this. I would love to get you and Rachel back on the same one, right?
Like in person, though.
Yes, in person. Rachel, damn it. Heather, you are an incredible woman. I'm
pretty fucking lucky.
Both of you are. I mean, you're good people. I mean, it's good people are hard to find.
You know,
and you
for
found
what,
each other.
What you fought through
Thank God.
What you have fought through to
Say
get
that
where
again?
you're at.
I said, thank God.
That's right. He got us in the middle.
Fought through to get to where you're at mentally. I feel like, you know, my struggle was minute compared to what you went through.
Hold on, but don't minimize.
No, I'm not minimizing mine. I struggled for me.
Everybody's a little different.
Yes.
Everybody's
and it's
different.
just, you know, and it's just incredible. And there's so many more people. And this is why, once again, I do this podcast, or why Rob and I do this podcast, is I just want people to hear these stories and know there's hope, right? There's fucking hope.
More than just hope.
Don't stop, man. Find something. And you said it, and I say it all the time. There's something's got to reverse that darkness, right? For you, it was your bare feet in that ground and laying there. You were grounded. That reversed it. That one person did something for you. The one that did something for me. It just something that had to reverse that darkness to where you go, oh my God, I saw that light. I want to go to that. I want more of that, right?
Right.
And on top of that, you got this sobriety thing, and then you got into the family of AA. And I want to preference this a little bit. Listen, what you went through with the sponsors and what you went through, that's not typical of AA.
No.
That's not our family. That is not. That is some piece of shit that
That's
got
wood chipper
involved
material.
yeah,
To be quite honest.
that got involved somewhere where they don't belong. And, you know, it happens from time to time, but you were smart enough to get the fuck away from it, right? You know, I would love to see you start your own AA group. I honestly, Heather, I'm going to continue to follow
find a different home
No,
group.
I would
and
love
contribute
for you
in that
to
way because you have to
contribute to.
It's too powerful not to share that
you
story.
You have so much to give into this thing, and not contributing to that. You know, I'm going to take it back to this. Rob says, "Don't be," and I'm going to be kind of a dick right now,
By
but
all means.
you're being selfish by not being involved, right? Because there's people that need you. There's people that need you. And I don't let the pieces of shit that ran you away from it keep you away from giving back to somebody that could possibly, you can be that trigger in their mind. You can be that little bit of something that reverses their darkness. That's why I do this, right?
It's kind of why we're here today.
Right. And just whatever I can do to help, you want to come back on here any given time, you have guests you want on here, whatever you need. Rob and I are here to help you facilitate anybody you want to come on and speak. I will guarantee you our listeners would love to hear more from you. I mean, like I said,
if they don't, I don't matter. I like to hear it. Like, you know, and have heard Rachel as that dynamic would be great.
I mean, that's it. Yeah. Anyways, I don't even know how to shut this one down.
recoveryunfilteredpodcast at gmail.com.
Well, here's the last thing I'm going to say. We have somebody in Germany that keeps listening, and I don't know if they're English speaking or not, but please reach out to me.
I don't speak German. I'd say something.
I would love to make sure that they're getting the help they need. And anybody that's needed wants to reach out to Heather, please call me or email me at recoveryunfilteredpodcast at gmail.com. That's recoveryunfilteredpodcast at gmail.com. Heather, I adore you. Your strength is incredible. That was 2 hours that I could do over and over again just to listen. I can't even tell you last time I shut up that long.
Brother,
Neither can we.
Well, I don't do any
probably
of it
when you
alone.
were sleeping.
What's that?
Said I don't do any day of it alone.
No, and I know you don't. I mean, you have the help. And you know what? That's why I'm sure you get this from John. I'm sure you're getting it from other people, but you're getting it from a complete stranger. You're a very encouraging person. You're very strong. And I would love to see you use that. I got called on New Year's Day to go down to a behavioral center in Merced. Did you hear me talk about it? I didn't even know what I was going into. But my God, I love sitting down with those people and talking and trying to give some light into what I know is a dark fucking place to be. And it's miserable to be in that.
Absolutely.
And if I was able to change any of it, God bless. But it ain't up to me. It's up to God whether He used me to help somebody else's darkness, right? I don't know, but I'm
we still have to be available.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I'm just going to keep talking, and I'm going to keep encouraging you. Whatever I can. I mean, you know you don't need my help, but I mean, if coming onto this podcast to get your message out to talk, by all means, I'm here all the time. Rob's here all the time.
Just don't come when he's eating Cheetos.
Shut up.
It's terrible.
I'll listen.
You'll
for the
need
bag
more therapy
crinkling.
for that one. Can't wait.
baby
Can you
wipes.
see what I just saw?
Wow. You know what? My wife's going to be pulling in.
Little
I want
bitty
you to
chicken.
meet Katie. I don't want you leaving without meeting my wife. So,
All right.
John, thank you, my brother. Thank
Anytime, man.
Thank you for introducing me to Heather.
Oh, you're welcome.
My God.
I'm just in the shadow.
I only
Literally, because she's so much taller than me.
I only like you, John, now for Heather. I'm gonna use
Rigorous
you.
honesty.
I'm
That's
gonna
terrible.
use you to get to Heather.
Hey, John, I love you.
I do love you, John.
And those 5 foot somethings will stick
You know
together.
what you went through. I'm gonna say this just before we close.
Well, me and John are just garden variety alcoholic addicts. That's all we are.
I know, but watching you go from when you first started coming back into our group to where you're at now, because you struggled right there, right? And I haven't been through that yet.
I was dry drunken,
Right.
like straight up. I went through, Heather was, I'll keep this kind of short because I know you want to finish up, but, I went through these roller coaster rides in the last 20 years of my sobriety as, highs and lows, dry drunk and doing well, dry drunk, doing well, dry drunk and doing well. After sitting here and listening and just kind of being quiet, which I don't do very often either. Right. Yeah. That's one of the things that you and I have in common. Right. You ask the people at work, I never shut the fuck up. Right. So, one of the things that kept popping back into my head, Otter God, whatever, is, I had to go back to, we're not affiliated, but I had to go back to Alcoholics Anonymous to go back to the beginning. Right. I couldn't try to fix myself at the end where I've ended up. I had to fix myself from the beginning.
Let me ask you this. I mean, because most people don't know.
We could do a whole nother podcast.
I could keep going.
But 21 years, we've been around. How special is what God has built Monday night, which is not, and it's, come on. I mean, as far as just men, just talking men, how special is that?
So that Monday night group, right? How I got introduced to this Monday night group it was just, again, Otter God, right? I am in Save Mart. I run into Jason R. and we're sitting there talking, and I knew from Oakdale, him and his wife from Oakdale Fellowship. And he goes, "Hey dude, we're doing this, meeting tomorrow night at Aaron's house. Aaron, he's right there." And I'm like, I look at Aaron, and I'm like, I didn't even know who the hell he was talking about, right? And he goes, "That guy right there, tomorrow night." I'm like, "Text me the address." Like that.
I remember you walked in.
But look at words. Look at what God does.
But here we are in the back of Aaron's house, and
with about five people.
There was like 5 of us.
Right.
It was one of Doug's first meetings in that group. So here Doug and I are together, and then there's a couple of us, and then now we've grown into this, where we're at now, and it's standing room only, and that is.
Men are hungry. God's bringing hungry men.
But you know what?
Well, it's standing room only, and it's like not even everybody's showing up.
Well,
all at once, all at once.
And I'm going to contribute to this, and I am going to close this down because I got a wife outside waiting for me. And I want her to meet you. I just told her. That group, I don't want to go against AA, but that group, we don't. But that group is just fucking men holding each other accountable. It's something different.
It's men of faith.
And it's not just what we're doing. That can be done in any group. That can be done as long as you...
There's just something there, baby.
It ain't you, Rob.
I know it ain't me. It's God.
And that's all I'm saying is I encourage that.
You have to have it in order to give it away.
Yes, right. And the reason why I keep encouraging that is because I think so many people leave that room of AA and walk into an abyss of nothing. You're either going to go drunk and do something stupid again, or 2, you're going to be a dry drunk and not enjoy this serenity that this program gives us, the gifts, the promises. If you go out there and just, another AA, I know guys that go to AA meetings 7 days a week and they've been coming for 30 years and they're dry as fuck. I ain't doing this for that. I'm not doing this. If I'm going to do that, fuck it. I'm going to go out and get drunk. I ain't fucking doing that. I want my peace. I want my serenity. And it comes with this right here. This is what gives me peace. Now, whether it lasts tomorrow, that's up to me, right? It's up to me how I approach tomorrow. I have no idea where the fuck I'm going with this. Let's get the fuck out of here. Rob, love you.
We don't have to worry about tomorrow.
Recovery Unfiltered Podcast at gmail.com.
Thank you for joining us today.
We hope you learned something today that will help you.
If you did not, come back next week and we'll try again.
If you like what we heard, give us a 5-star review. If you don't like what you heard, kiss my... You can't say that, can you? Anyway, if you don't like what you heard, go ahead and tell us that too. We'll see what we can improve. We probably won't change nothing, but do it anyway.
Hey, thanks, Rob. Come back next week and hopefully something will be different and something will sink in. Take care.
This has been Recovery Unfiltered.